Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of DSC's Charity Questions. I'm your host, George Knight, and today we're here with the CEO of Mind, Sarah Hughes. It's been something I've been looking forward to doing for a long time, Sarah, and I know you're incredibly busy, and so we're very grateful to have you here today. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much. The pressure is on, though. Wow. Yes. I'll do
No
my best.
pressure. I'm excited. Okay. So let's jump straight in. And when we were asking people for questions, more than some of the other podcasts, it was actually a lot about your backstory and what led you to be in this role. And one of the questions that came up predominantly actually was, is there an inspiration for you to pursue your career in mental health? Where did that inspiration come from, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have worked in mental health, as most people know, for like 35 years, so a long time. And I think the inspiration very much came from my parents. So my
Mm,
parents both have worked in communities for a long time, looking after each other, looking after people
mm,
with all sorts of interesting lives. And of course, we also, as a family, experienced quite serious mental illness. Various members of my family at different times were in and out of psychiatric hospital, people experiencing addiction, homelessness. So it wasn't far away, it wasn't alien to me, and it felt
mm,
very natural for me to want to work in this space. And then when I started working in this space, it made complete sense. It
mm.
just felt like coming home. And so the inspiration very much came from family, but also my parents, who have worked many years. I mean, my dad's dead now, but my mum just retired from being a cook in a old people's home. So,
Oh my gosh.
working, serving communities and people is in my DNA.
That's lovely. That's really nice. And so now you're in this position, 35 years of working in mental health, and you're this leader of a massive mental health charity, right? They are the biggest. And so, in terms of how you lead as the CEO, are there any leadership values? I'm thinking if people are aspiring to this role and the skills they wanted to develop, what skills have you developed in your leadership that you think really work in the Mind CEO role?
That's a great question. And I think that, so I use a feminist leadership model. So I think about inclusion, I think about equity, I think about
Mm,
compassion, I think about dealing with things up front. One of
mm,
the things that, dealing with conflict is quite important, having courage. I think that the other thing that is really important to me is this sense of hope. And one of the things that I realized really early on in my career, and probably people that have met me time and time again have heard me say, is that um, our job in the charity sector is to hold on to hope when all hope is lost. So I very much try and embody that spirit of hope and belief and potential in the communities that we serve. So
mm,
I also don't believe that I'm a benefactor of goodness that I give to
mm,
other people. That's not what I believe charity is, or what I believe one of my central leadership values sits. It's about recognizing the potential in others and finding space for them,
mm,
not
mm.
bestowing goodness on them. That idea of charity and leadership doesn't sit well with me.
I like that, to give the space and then almost get out the way.
At
That's
100%, absolutely, which is an interesting concept now that I run a very big charity, but
mm.
I'm sure we'll get into that.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't want to be too leading with this next question, but in terms of being a female leader, I mean, DSC has an incredibly powerful female leader, Deborah Alcock Tyler, and I'm sure she
With the Queen, by the way,
yeah,
just to say.
I think we all have to say that. It's in our contract to say
I
that at
mean, for
DSC.
sure,
So
for sure.
yeah, and I know she's spoken about some challenges in the past, but have you found any challenges as a female leader coming into that big role?
I mean, look, I absolutely do think that being a female leader, um, we still experience huge barriers and all sorts of projections from the people we work with and
Mm,
work alongside. I mean, it is quite extraordinary that we still are in 2024 experiencing these things. It was the topic of my doctorate. So,
wow.
women leaders, I think are still experiencing this notion of, when you think of leadership, quite often people still think of that as a kind of male framework. The language is male, the expectations are very male orientated. And so I think
Mm,
that that's still very much the case, and more and more. And despite people saying, well, women are, prime ministers, they're presidents, they're chief execs, that might be true, but still in very small numbers. And in
mm,
there is a rollback we are seeing in all public life. So this is in for MPs, for chief execs. Women are starting to say, do you know what, actually, sod that. I don't want to be doing that, because
mm,
you're still facing the barriers that we've been facing for decades and decades. So
mm,
I think for me that there are intersectionalities as well that we mustn't forget. And so, I am, I'm of mixed heritage, except I'm a white passing leader. So there's huge privilege of that. If you're a black female leader, you're
mm,
going to experience all sorts of things. And I
mm,
see on social media, for instance, a huge discrimination, the things that are said to us. And I will often tell people that, if I say something overtly feminist online,
mm,
then with me, I will get an inbox full of a lot of not very nice things. And
mm,
I think that we're still not facing the truth of it, the truth of the discrimination that we experience. And I've had in the last year people look me up and down. I've had people correct my grammar. And this is the other thing about
oh,
class. There's a great article today in The Guardian about the charity sector and people from working class backgrounds who struggle
mm,
to get into leadership positions. So the intersectionality of class, race, gender, sexuality is still a factor today. And we're not really good at talking about it, and we're
mm.
not good at confronting it. Although if you're in a meeting with me and I do see some of those gender dynamics played out, be sure I'll probably call it out.
Good, right, and yeah.
I will take my lead from the Queen, Deborah, who has been doing it for decades, actually, and she's done it beautifully. And I think we still have to do it today.
Absolutely, and the opposite is we stop and we give up, right? And where do we end up there? And we have to fight the good fight. And I'm sure your inbox, yeah, being flooded with negativity, that's normally a victim of success as well. And actually, for everybody that's moaning, there's 100 people that aren't saying anything but are agreeing. And it's
For sure,
just those voices rise to the top, don't they?
you're right.
Yeah, maybe there's another podcast in here, Sarah. Potentially, we could go a lot deeper on this, couldn't we, with Deborah as well? Okay. But our listeners are also here to learn about the mental health in the charity sector. So if I could bring back to some questions about mental health charities, and maybe just from mine's perspective personally, or maybe the wider mental health sector, key challenges in the sector and key opportunities. Are there any that you feel are worth sharing with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a really important time for mental health charities. And I think we have for decades been providing services both on the periphery of, national health services and public services for a long time. Increasingly, though, over the last decade, particularly, we've been stepping in and providing statutory services. And many of us across the country have very big statutory contracts, some smaller in smaller communities. And that's been important and good because we've been able to provide great services to our communities and the public. But being contracted in that way brings huge challenges. And so
Mm,
I think the whole model of funding the charity sector is really challenging, particularly mental health, because I think
mm,
mental health is still sadly the Cinderella of health and funding priorities. And for all of the rhetoric we have out there about how much money is put into mental health, it absolutely doesn't chime with the demand that we're
mm,
in places all around the country. So I think that the funding mechanisms are difficult. I think that, like public sector organisations, we've got challenges with the workforce too. We need qualified folk, we need people who are able to work flexibly. All of these things are really difficult. We also need to provide the best support to people because they're doing work that's really tough. So there's lots of challenges, there's lots of real issues around meeting demand, and I think we've been facing that for a long time. But at the moment, post-pandemic, the cost of living crisis, sadly the increase in the numbers of people taking their own lives that we've seen over the last year or two,
Mm,
all of these things mean that we have to be, at the front of it. We have to be able to support folk, but we're not really able to do as much as we want to or could.
yeah.
Opportunities, of course, are great too, although we have got a bit of an ambivalent time. So on one hand, mental health is in the public consciousness,
True.
absolutely is. But we're also seeing a bit of a rollback in attitudes. We see the comments that the government, particularly the DWP minister, has been using it recently in relation to mental health. And,
Mm,
so some of that is taking us back quite a significant way in terms of the progress we've made. So that is a real concern. But the opportunity, though, that gives is for us to come out and really support the nation in the next step in understanding mental health. So we've done really great things over the last 10 years about
hmm.
raising the profile.
Definitely.
Now we think Mind thinks that the nation is ready for the next step. And the next step is really going deeper into the causes of mental illness and
Mm.
what we can do about it. And frankly, and I feel myself on my soapbox, but you
No,
know,
you're not. Keep going.
for instance, we know that poverty and mental health are inextricably linked. If we could eradicate poverty, the impact on the mental health of the nation would be virtually immediate. And
Mm,
so we can keep going round the houses talking about we don't have enough services, but let's once and for all tackle the cause. And
mm.
we know more now than we ever have done about those sorts of things.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you're right. They take the time now to step it up, and I wonder what that will look like, Sarah. And I look forward to seeing how mine to take on that challenge. And my wife works for Calm, so you mentioned suicide, and so it's yeah, incredible work these organisations are doing, all at the top level, but also all the little ones out there as well, doing the similar work on a community scale.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the beauty of the mental health sector. We've got
Exactly.
organisations of all different shapes and sizes um, doing brilliant stuff, making the impact that we want to see. But
Mm,
at the same time, they will tell you, we know that if we could really deal with the causal aspects of poor mental health, the
exactly.
difference we could make would be astounding. And so
Mm,
I'm really asking the government to really get behind that. Let's
mm.
stop talking about what do we do about mental illness, and let's talk about, how can we stop the worst things from happening.
Yeah, it's medicine 3.0, Peter Attia's model of actually what are these root causes? Can we go 15 years before mental health experiences and see what's developing there, and maybe childhood, and yeah, lots of stuff, isn't there, Sarah, to think
All of
about.
that good stuff.
Lovely. There's a couple of questions here about what charity CEOs can do and what individuals can do, but I think I'm going to save those. And we're going to end on those, I think, because that might be quite a nice way. We're going to put you right on the spot on the last question, I think. Rather than do it now, I'm going to wait till the end. We'll ramp up. So looking at Mind then, and potentially some recent partnerships or maybe upcoming partnerships or collaborations that you can share. Just for the listeners, maybe could you name one that's really impacted the charity?
Yes, so I there's a number of partnerships. One of the
Mm,
things I am really keen for Mind to motor on is our ability as a big organisation to support the plethora of charities out there that are supporting mental health, and how do we use our platform as a big organisation to generate funds, to
mm.
share platforms, to amplify other voices. And that really is one of the most exciting things that we are motoring on at the moment. And that's not just with our local Mind network partners, but also our equity partners. So one of the things that I'm very proud of is we've supported the Black Mental Health Manifesto, which actually
Mm,
is this week. And
yeah.
when this podcast is released, it'll probably be a few weeks old, but it's a great piece of work, and it has been put together by our partners in the equity space, and we've been a support act.
Mm,
We've provided our own knowledge and insights, as well as bringing together theirs, using our platform to see how we can amplify their work, etc. And so I think that partnership I feel really proud of. I don't think we can take any credit for it, I have to
mm,
say. I think, we've been, a slumbering partner, but one that I think has given space and stepped out of the space to make sure that the real important voices are heard.
mm.
So I'm really proud of that. And do look out for the Black Mental Health Manifesto. I think, we know that people from racialised communities get the worst deal in mental health. So
Mm,
we have to put our money where our mouth is and really get behind things that challenge and provoke the system into thinking differently. So that's what we're doing with that. But we've got lots of other partnerships too. We've got lots of
yeah.
interesting partnerships that I think take us to different places. We've got a great partnership with McVitie's, for instance, and they have been really interesting because they also are really keen on the prevention agenda. They're coming from a
Mm,
place, they're a biscuit, company, and you might think, well, how do those two things come together? And sometimes we get challenged, and but for me, it's about using big platforms to generate new ideas and to push through. So, we've got great corporate partners too who are really, really, I've been quite moved and astonished at their generosity and compassion. Another one is Motto, the uh, roadside
oh,
um,
okay, yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they are brilliant, and I
Mm,
recently went to their staff awards where they were talking about, their own values, and hearing about their staff supporting customers, in a really very moving, compassionate way. And I think that's what
mm,
we need partnerships that are going to be talking about social change,
mhm,
a revolution of kindness across communities.
mm.
I think all of those are, a winning kind of recipe for partnerships, but they come in all shapes and sizes.
And a good example, I mean, I come off the back of 2 6-hour drives at the weekend, and actually bringing in a well-being element into the drive and reminding people passively, take a break,
Yeah,
breathe, relax. Like, this is going to increase safety, physical health as well. And
all of that. And when you go into one of their stores, they'll have mental health tables where you can kind
mm,
of get some insights and resources. And again, it's about trying to find places where our people are,
yeah,
and our people are in all sorts of places.
absolutely. Yeah, it's there is no defined beneficiary necessarily, is there, which is super tough actually. I love that. And so, in terms of measuring the programs and services you do, again, the listeners probably are really interested in how you measure your impact. Is there one project maybe you could tell us about, and how you measure the success of those projects?
Well, I mean, I think at Mind, so there are a number of ways. So at Mind, we are a large national organisation, but we're also part of a federation where we have 109 local minds, and we have something in the region of 180 charity shops on high roads and in communities all around the country.
Yeah.
And measuring the impact of all of that is quite a challenge, actually, because notoriously measuring impact is something the charity sector don't immediately find very easily.
Yeah.
I think we've got to, be really creative and develop new ideas. We obviously prioritize lived experience. So if people tell us our program is having a good impact,
Yeah.
that is top dollar,
Exactly.
So um, we often find ourselves in charities and in services competing against what we call the hierarchy of evidence. So
Hmm.
it's only worthwhile if we can do a randomized controlled trial.
Hmm.
And, we have to fight a bit against that because, we want people to tell us if
Yeah.
things are working for them. And, there is a place for RCTs, and we
Hmm.
must lose sight of all of that. The hierarchy of evidence, we need all of it, but we prioritize people's lived experience. We've also got lots of other measures, and at the moment, we reorganised national mind to create a directorate that is solely focused on impact.
Mm.
The reason we did that was because, you know, it's my belief that we have to find a way of telling that story,
Yeah.
telling the story of what works, what really makes a difference. And we have to, as an organization, put our full weight and chest behind it. You
Mm.
know, really do need to be able to demonstrate, you know, um, what we do makes a difference. And,
Absolutely.
you know, how we're spending money makes a difference. And so we can't hide from those questions anymore. And
Yeah.
I think for a long time, we've we've just kind of bungled along with a friend of mine, Nick, calls the beguiling narrative. And I think that as charities, we're beyond that now. We've got the resources and the ability to do something different,
Mm.
its impact. So I'm not saying that we're there yet at Mind, but
Of
I think
course.
we've got loads of different things in the pot that we're looking at.
Absolutely, yeah. And as a fundraiser, I think funders are talking the same language. They like that subjective. And yes, I can tell you that 1,000 participants have attended and they rated us 96%. But what's that story? What's that video testimonial that's going to grab the hearts and the attention of people? That individual person can tell more than 1,000 people filling out a survey, right? Sometimes. So
Absolutely.
that's really lovely. Yeah, I think that resonates. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are all sat there going, "We're already doing that. That's really nice, actually, to know to
Exactly,
hear that."
exactly. And it shouldn't be rocket science either.
Yeah,
It should be human first.
exactly. I love it. Okay. So you've developed this culture at Mind, and I guess there's a extra responsibility to mental health. I imagine that you all feel as people that work there, and maybe that draws a certain type of person as well to the organization. Is there anything in terms of the organization culture that you're most proud of, and potentially would then like to see in other organizations?
I think that it's a real challenge to help organizations understand what is good for, you know, mentally healthy workplaces. And
Mm,
sometimes, you know, regardless of who you are, you can get it right and wrong.
mm,
So I think we at Mind, and we've made this commitment recently, that we have to be the best employers
yeah,
mental health. We absolutely have to
yeah,
strive to make sure that we embed all of those commitments in what we do, how we work with people.
absolutely.
But we also have to remind ourselves that, you know, it's a place of work, and how do we get the best out of people on behalf of our beneficiaries?
Hmm.
But we're managing all of those tensions like everybody else is all of the time. And so I think that, you know, where we're going is really focusing on values and behaviors, really
Mm,
making sure that those are clear, that you are clear with your workforce about the expectations. What can they expect from you? What can you expect from them?
yeah.
They really do focus on talent and opportunity
Hmm.
rather than deficit and weakness. That, you know, we want a strengths based model, we want a growth
Nice.
mindset. So to do all of that, we have to find a way of kind of being open and having conversations about what we need to do. We need to be mission driven,
Mm,
not, not in a way that makes you feel like you're in a cult, because, you know, we don't want that either. Um, but we do want every single person in the organization to understand what and why we're there. And
exactly.
again, in big organizations, that can get lost. So
Mm,
reminding ourselves all of the time, what is our purpose?
mm,
What is
mm,
our added value?
mhm.
What is our duty and accountability? All of those things are important.
Yeah,
Um, but, you know, workplaces, there are easy things to do to create mentally healthy environments. And that's very much about flexibility, you know, supporting people to understand, you know, exactly what they need to be doing. I think
yeah,
it's important to think about, you know, how people are looking after their well-being outside of their working lives. So
absolutely.
I've got a little bit of a caveat on the bring your whole self to work thing.
Mm,
I
that's
do think you have to come to work and be allowed and supported to be your authentic self.
mm,
But I also want you to prioritize your well-being in your own life too. So
absolutely.
people are not just their jobs.
Yeah,
They're just their places of work. And so again, I'm thinking about the reality of, bringing your whole self to work versus bringing your authentic self to work versus, we are accountable to the organization. So all of these things have got to work in harmony for a mentally healthy workplace. And, that is my ambition, is that we crack that
Mm.
at some point, in certainly at mine, but for all of us, that we crack that, the barriers to getting there.
Yeah, and we know pay can be a factor, of course, but we also know it's a small factor, actually. And if you look at how we support the well-being of our colleagues and ourselves, and if an organisation is conducive to that, then it's hard to leave.
Indeed.
Yeah, and that so there was a little bit about CEOs and what they can do. Is there anything else if you were maybe moving to a new organisation and you were taking on a new CEO role? Anything else you might do to try and create an open and supportive culture around mental health?
I mean, I think it's very much, for chief executives to work out how they are going to talk about stuff in the
Mm,
workplace. How comfortable do you feel having these conversations? How comfortable do you feel being vulnerable, sharing things
mm.
about yourself? Now, I'm a bit of an oversharer occasionally, so
Me
that's
too.
probably, and sometimes that gets me into trouble. But at the same time, I think being able to, as a chief exec, be open and honest and
Mm,
authentic to the workforce, that it doesn't solve everything, but it
mm.
does enable conversations to happen and for things to seep into the culture.
Okay.
Um, so, just my advice to all new chief execs is try and find your authenticity. And I, have been given this advice by, great colleagues. Polly Neat
Mm,
has this very good saying that just says, "Know yourself, be yourself."
mm,
And I think that is really good advice for any of the issues around mental health or gender or any of those issues in the workplace that can create barriers. Um, but then the other thing is, I think, I mean, you find your chief executive peer group. I call it your
mm,
C squad, and the reason being is that you need a group of peers that you can talk to about this stuff. That you can say, "Oh, how do I begin to have this conversation? Or am I observing this well? Or, what, having that, being able to share that with people who understand is
mm,
critically important. Deborah is one of the people that I will have these conversations with, and, many others where I kind of can be vulnerable and say, I don't really know what I'm doing. Can someone
mm.
help me? Or
Yeah,
can you?
'cause I think it can be lonely, and I've sat in a management role, and you've got the other managers actually next to you. But then, yeah, you're right. You're at this exec role. Maybe you've got the chair, maybe you've got the trustees, but it's slightly different, isn't it? To maybe a slightly less of an open conversation, and it potentially sending people to a Kivo, or maybe
Oh,
not.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Akivo, I mean, I think every charity chief executive should be a member of Akivo,
yeah,
and it's just that backup. It's
mm,
having that backup. And being a charity chief exec is today harder than I think it has been for many years. I
yeah,
think scrutiny on charity chief execs as individuals, I think, um, all of the way in which people discuss on social media, and I just think all of that exposes individuals in a way that it never has done before, or hasn't done to the same degree. And I
yeah,
certainly, I prior to being chief executive of Mind, I was a prolific social media user.
yeah.
Now, it's much harder to be that open and that free because people are less tolerant and, um, are more quick to make judgments about what you think or what you're saying. And so that's a big challenge.
Yeah, and it's great because you can have that reach. So when you do speak, it can reach more people. But you're right, there's less opportunity then to be flexible, and that must feel like a lot of pressure, actually, Sarah. That's quite tough, I imagine.
Some days it's tricky. I was thinking
Yeah.
about it even today. We've got a big battle with the government in a way at the moment around, the way they're talking about mental health, specifically
Mm,
in relation to benefits. And
mm,
it's tricky and disappointing because we've worked so closely with them for a long time and we've seen them make great strides in mental health. But this feels like a rollback, and
mm,
that, so we're having very difficult conversations, and I've got to step forward into that space, but
Mm.
also mindful that then that does create an exposure that is not always enjoyable.
Yeah, it's not easy. And yeah, I think the wrong thing to do would be to stop as well. And you got to just keep it up, haven't you? And yeah, potentially learn and keeps putting the right message out there. I think
Yeah,
that's really nice.
absolutely.
So Akivo, for those that don't know, it's the maybe I get this wrong. I'm going to go for it. It's the Association of Chief Executives of Voluntary Organisations. Yes, ACEVO. Just Google it, and you can find out how to join them. Lovely. So, maybe from your perspective, then, as an individual supporting your own mental health, or maybe some behaviours you've seen from others in mind or in the sector, is there anything that practically you're seeing people do to support their own mental health in the charity sector?
So again, I think it is this how you create that well-being focus in your private life. So I think there has to be an acceptance that um, being a charity leader, just using charity leaders as an example, is tough. It's hard graft. You know, there are
Mm,
long hours, long days, difficult decisions. There's only so much of the pain of that you can mitigate, to be honest. You know,
yeah,
sometimes it is we just have to keep going. We have to, you know, keep making these decisions, keep trying to sustain organizations. It's just sometimes relentless.
yeah.
So as a result of that, the time that you do have when you're not working is precious.
Mm,
We must make, I think, good decisions about how we use that time. Now, I'm not somebody who then fills all of my free time with stuff, because
mm,
actually the thing that's good for my well-being is being with my family. So I've
absolutely.
got two children, a husband, I've got pets,
Oh,
and being with them is the thing that fills me up with joy. So I'm always going to prioritize them. Um, and then, you know, what's good for me, I like lying on the sofa, scrolling TikTok, you know,
nice.
do the things that are good for you, you know, and be all right about it. I like getting my nails done. I like
Absolutely.
doing all of those sorts of things. I have just persuaded my family to do a family gym membership. So
Okay,
we're going to give that a go. We'll see how that goes.
that's
But, you know,
exciting.
it's stuff. Do stuff that it fills your cup, and
Mm,
feel okay about it. You
yeah,
know, because the reality is, and you know, it's a simple equation that if you are not doing that, you won't survive these jobs. You just won't.
yeah,
I've got friends. You know, I look at friends from across the sector, and you know, they go hiking,
yeah.
they ride their horses, you know, they also spend time with their families, and that inspires me. One person who I think is the best at this
Go on.
is a leader called Poppy Jaman,
Copy your
and
man.
she was the pioneer of mental health first aid in the UK, and
Mm,
she leads now Mind Forward Alliance Global, and
cool.
she is astonishing leader. But the way she kind of fills her life with well-being and good stuff, I think is an inspiration to us all.
Yeah, and we've evolved having a lot of play in our lives and not necessarily having much work in our days. Decision making fatigue is real, and if you're trying to cling on to the workday at 6 p.m., it's not always the best thing to be doing. And then if you're not clinging on to the workday and you're beating yourself up for not working, then we're in this kind of vicious loop, aren't we? So
Exactly,
that's
absolutely.
lovely. And so that was Poppy Jaman. What was the organisation again? Sorry,
So Mind Forward Alliance,
Mind Forward Alliance.
yeah,
Lovely.
and they talk about workplace mental health, and so she's got all of the stuff about, you know, what keeps you well at work, but
Mm,
this building your life of self-care and well-being, I think is, yeah,
yeah,
inspiration.
and I personally found time in nature to be incredibly soothing for
Absolutely,
both physical and
absolutely.
mental. Yeah.
Yes, if you can get to we're just in the time that you might be able to get to see the bluebells in your local bluebell wood, and do go and have a look, because the carpet of bluebells at this time of year is
Mm.
magic.
Yeah, and just for context, we're recording at the end of April,
Oh
so
yes.
yes, we'll see how the bluebells are doing when this comes out. But even then, you're going to have the opportunity for the new growth to come in, and we
Oh,
do something
beautiful.
at DSC that's maybe worth sharing. Every 2 months, we have a photo challenge. It changes every 2 months, and so we started out with New Life in January and February. spots of new life. So the young bluebells coming through, and it was pictures, and it was a lot of families were contributing quite nicely at DSC. We're now on the sun, so two
Oh, I
months
love
of
that.
it's
Yeah,
been very
we need the
successful.
sun. We need
Yeah.
the sun. Come on, let's manifest it together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a lovely day where I am right now, actually, as well. Um, so there's two questions left. I want to end on you sharing a little bit about any upcoming stuff that you want to talk about at Mind. But one last question before that is about any emerging technology or approaches that you think mental health charities could use, or that you're maybe seeing that Mind could use. Is there anything new in the space that you think is going to have a big impact?
Well, look, I mean, we're still at the foothills of the whole artificial intelligence revolution, right? So we
Yeah.
are starting to see emerging, um, you know, therapeutic tools that are coming from AI. So one of the things that we've done at Mind is we've created an app library. It's called Orca, and it's effectively a space where people can go for their quality technology. So if you want a mental health intervention, and we're flooded with apps now, aren't we?
Mm,
On there, you will find things that are sort of approved for sleep, for anxiety, for various other things. So,
nice.
we know that technology is really important. Digital interventions, I think, are going to be, I don't think they'll ever replace human interaction, but they will support it. And so we
100%.
are we are looking at what is that added value. So we provide that quality resource and people can access that. We're also going to be working with our local minds around, what are the digital solutions that we're all employing across the system. And
Yeah.
some people run helplines and some of them do that online, do it in a traditional way. So we're all going to kind of explore all of that, because there is a tension, I think, for me about, we assume that technology is going to be the kind of savior of all sorts of things. And I think that we've got to be really cautious,
Mm,
because we know for sure that children and young people who are digital natives
hmm.
absolutely will probably go to a technology solution quite quickly and
Mm,
intuitively. But at the same time, we don't want to cause further harm, and that risk is very, very real. And so, yeah, we love technology.
yeah.
There are so many solutions out there, but we've got to keep, sleep with one eye open on that.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, and as long as we're organic humans with organic bodies, we have to spend time in nature, and technology can help us in other parts of our lives. But the basics of spending time in nature, I think, are still there, aren't they? Even if we are very computer literate and AI led.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, any fundraising events or campaigns occurring at Mind that you want to share with the listeners while we've still got you, Sarah?
Yeah, so it's Mental Health Awareness Week in May,
Yes.
and it's very exciting. And in fact, Mental Health Foundation have this year created the theme about mental health and physical health. And
Yes.
I think that's a great one, and we'll be supporting it. Our own campaign will be No Mind Left Behind. And we're
Oof.
going to be talking about all sorts of aspects of mental health. We'll be doing some of the work around physical activity. We've got a great physical activity team.
Mm,
But we're also going to be talking about injustice in mental health. And, we want to see great social progress. And so
mm.
that's what we're going to be talking about. And over this year, I mean, I can't talk a bit. I hate that when people say I can't talk too much about this. I feel like a celebrity, I'm in it.
I know. I think it sounds really cool. I'm like, that's very mysterious.
But we've got some really great stuff that we are going to
Yeah.
launch in October around World Mental Health Day, and we're very, very excited about it. And
Mm,
it's with this concept of no mind left behind. We
yeah.
really want to make sure that we're conveying to people we are there for you. We
Mm,
want to understand, what it does mental health mean for people today.
exactly.
It's different to what it was pre-pandemic, and we need to unpick all of that. So this year is a big year of conversation and
Mm,
exploration for us, but we want to convey mostly that we are here for the nation's mental health. We're not going anywhere.
absolutely. Very, very powerful, Sarah. Thank you so much, and lots of interesting bits that came out of that, and lots of useful understanding of your experience as well. And thank you for being so honest, as I expected you to be. And I think
Thank you.
Deborah obviously speaks about you very highly as well, Sarah. So you mentioned social media. If our listeners wanted to follow you specifically, where would they go to follow you? LinkedIn, Twitter, what are you?
Yeah, so
Platforms?
I'm on all of those platforms.
Yeah,
I love a bit of well, I love Instagram is probably my
cool,
favorite.
cool.
That's because you can duck in and duck out.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm on all of the Twitters. It's not called Twitter now, is it?
I should have called it X, shouldn't I? I said, ugh, yeah.
It's X. I've even got a TikTok account, but I mean,
Cool.
don't even look at it. Don't look.
And are you at Sarah Hughes Mind? What is it, Sarah
Yeah,
Hughes?
I think it's mostly at. I'll have to send it to you, but I think it's at Sarah Hughes CEO.
Perfect, perfect. So we
I'm
can put it
sorry,
in
I'm
the
rubbish at
show
that.
notes.
I'm gonna have to put it in the notes.
I think if you're searching on social media, Sarah Hughes Mind, you're probably going to pop up, aren't you?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Oh,
I'm sure you are. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. And for those of the people not listening, sorry, not watching the video, Sarah's got some lovely imagery behind her as well. So maybe you can load up the YouTube and see it, or her lovely Zoom background. Thank you again, Sarah. Is there anything else? Any parting message for the group? No mind left behind. I love that.
no mind left behind. We're here. We're always behind the nation's mental health, and I'm looking forward to what happens over the coming year. But this is election year.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes opened, people, on the
Yeah.
manifestos.
Wow, that's a very nice message to leave it on. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for watching Charity Questions by the Directory of Social Change. So this is the podcast where we bring charity experts to you and we ask them the questions that you provide us via social media. So if you want to get involved, please check out the Directory of Social Change on Instagram, Twitter or LinkedIn. And of course, to hear more about this content and to learn more about Charity Questions, subscribe to our YouTube channel now and of course like this video to let us know if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.